Sometime in late August 2013, a businessman named Martin Lindsay parked his Jaguar XJ on Eastcheap, walked into a meeting, and came back to find his car had been cooked by a skyscraper. The beam coming off 20 Fenchurch Street reached temperatures exceeding 91 degrees Celsius at street level. A doormat in a nearby barber shop caught fire. Bicycle saddles melted in their racks. A lemon sitting on the counter of a cafe called Rebo's started cooking where it sat. And for approximately 2 hours every day, during a window of several weeks each late summer season, a moving arc of concentrated solar energy tracked across Eastcheap like a slow sniper, targeting anything flammable or plastic. Then a developer sold that building for £1.28 billion, a record. And the architect responsible had already made the exact same mistake once before, in Las Vegas. Welcome to 20 Fenchurch Street. The building was designed in 2004 by Uruguayan architect Rafael Vignoli, developed jointly by Land Securities and Canary Wharf Group, and completed in spring 2014. It stands 160 meters tall across 38 stories, cost over £200 million to construct, and was marketed as the crown jewel of London's new eastern cluster of high-rise commercial towers. Its selling point was the Sky Garden, a 3-level publicly accessible observation deck at the very top, promoted as London's first free public green space in the sky, with 3 60-degree views, 2 restaurants, and a landscape terrace. The architecture press called it innovative. The developer called it a gift to the city. The building's distinctive form, widening dramatically as it rises, was described as a contribution to the urban grain of the City of London. The problem was visible from the street. Long before anyone parked a car there, the shape itself announced what was coming. 3 forces collided to make this possible. First, the economic pressure of London's post-2008 development boom, which turned the City of London's skyline into a competitive theater where developers raced to maximize leasable floor area at the most valuable upper stories. Enlarging the floor plates at the top of the building rather than the bottom was not an accident of design. It was a financial strategy, and Vignoli's firm described it as such in their own project documentation. Second, a planning and regulatory environment that evaluated buildings primarily on height restrictions and heritage sightlines, with no mandatory solar reflection modeling required as a condition of approval. The planning consent was granted in 2009. Third, the growing availability of high-reflectivity unitized curtain wall glass on an industrial scale, installed here across 28,000 square meters of geometrically complex facade. The technology to clad an entire curved skyscraper in reflective glass existed. The regulatory framework to ask what that glass would do to the street below did not. The result was a building that was the logical product of a system designed to reward ambition and price risk onto the surrounding public. The physics of what happened on Eastcheap is not complicated. A concave mirror, regardless of what it is made of, concentrates reflected light toward a focal point. The south-facing facade of 20 Fenchurch Street curves inward across its full width. When the sun reaches a particular elevation angle in the late summer sky, the building acts precisely as a parabolic reflector, gathering sunlight from its entire southern glass surface and directing it into a compressed beam aimed at the street below. The size of the hotspot at ground level was reported as approximately 10 feet by 15 feet. The temperature within it exceeded 91 degrees Celsius, enough to cause serious burns to skin, melt automotive plastics, and ignite combustible materials like floor mats and bicycle saddle foam. The beam was not static. As the sun moved across the sky, the focal point tracked across Eastcheap at a slow, predictable arc, spending roughly 2 hours per day at damaging intensity during the affected period of the year. Cone Steamers, head of Cambridge University's architecture department, confirmed to Bloomberg that the issue could have been addressed by applying a finish to the outer glass that scatters rather than focuses reflected radiation. That fix existed before the building opened. Nobody applied it in time. The solar analysis was done. The developer's own spokesperson confirmed to the London Standard that a solar analysis and modeling exercise had been conducted during the design process. The risk that the building might act as a giant magnifying glass was explicitly evaluated. The conclusion was that it would not become a problem. That conclusion was wrong, and the building opened anyway. Raphael Vignoli had navigated this exact scenario before. His Vdara Hotel in Las Vegas, completed in 2010, produced what staff called the Vdara Death Ray, a concentrated solar beam from its curved south-facing facade that created a 10 by 15-foot hotspot at the resort's swimming pool area, singeing guests' hair and melting plastic cups and bags. A film was applied to the Vdara glass to disperse the light. That fix was in place years before 20 Fenchurch Street opened. Vignoli was aware of the Vdara incident. The louvres that had been included in the original 20 Fenchurch Street design, horizontal shading elements on the south facade specifically intended to prevent solar concentration, were removed at some point during the planning and value engineering process. Vignoli later told The Guardian that there had been a lot of mistakes and pointed to the removal of those louvres. He also blamed the UK development process itself, telling an interviewer that the superabundance of consultancies and sub-consultancies diluted the designer's responsibility to the point of dissolution. The beam, however, did not care about the consultancy structure. The doormat still burned. The story broke publicly in early September 2013. City AM ran the first report, focusing on Martin Lindsay's melted Jaguar XJ, whose wing mirror had warped, body panels had buckled, and front badge had deformed during the approximately 2 hours. Lindsay was inside a meeting on Eastcheap on a day in late August. Lindsay told CNN directly that the developers, Land Securities and Canary Wharf Construction, had agreed to pay for the damage and acknowledged the problem. An eyewitness named John Sawyer described bicycle saddles smoking in their racks outside a store directly facing the building. A cafe owner named Eddie Cannon, who operated Rebo's nearby, found his doormat smoldering and a lemon on his counter beginning to cook under the redirected light. Sky News sent a journalist to fry an egg on the pavement in the beam's path. The egg cooked. Within 48 hours of City AM's first report, the story had been covered by the BBC, The Guardian, CNN, and Bloomberg. By September 3rd, the developers had announced that temporary scaffolding and screening would be erected on the streets below. The City of London Corporation confirmed it had received a request to suspend 3 parking bays on Eastcheap that sat within the beam's daily path. A permanent brise-soleil, a metal sunshade structure, was eventually installed across the upper southern facade in 2014. After installation, 8,000 individual sunshades of varying sizes and geometries were fitted to the south elevation. The death ray was neutralized, but only after it had already performed in front of the world's press. Martin Lindsay, the company director whose Jaguar XJ suffered melted wing mirrors, warped panels, and a deformed front badge while parked on Eastcheap, received a confirmed settlement from Land Securities and Canary Wharf for the vehicle damage. The cost of the repairs to the Jaguar was not publicly disclosed in full, but Lindsay confirmed to CNN that the developers accepted liability without dispute. Eddie Cannon, the cafe owner at Rebo's, lost a doormat and reported produce beginning to cook on his counter during the beam's daily window, effectively losing use of his storefront during the hottest hours of multiple working weeks. The affected window ran for several weeks, each late summer. During those weeks, the beam tracked across Eastcheap for roughly 2 hours each day at temperatures that could ignite a doormat, cook produce on a counter, and cause serious burns to unprotected skin. A barbershop, at least 2 cafes, and several other businesses facing the south facade operated through that period with no warning signage, no compensation offer, and no timeline for resolution. Outdoor seating was unusable during the beam's daily window. Deliveries to pavement-level entrances had to be timed around it. At least one business owner told reporters they had started keeping a bucket of water near the front door. The City of London Corporation suspended 3 parking bays on Eastcheap that sat within the beam's path, but it issued no formal guidance to businesses about the risk to people standing in those same spots. The broader group of Eastcheap business owners had no legal avenue to recover economic losses for the disruption, because no injury requiring formal litigation had been documented before the temporary screens were installed. An academic study conducted after the incident concluded that the death ray could have caused serious harm to vulnerable people, particularly the young and elderly, and might have started fires in adjacent buildings had it struck combustible material in a window. Land Security's chief executive Robert Noel later described 20 Fenchurch Street as an immensely successful project. In July 2017, the building was sold to LKK Health Products Group, the property arm of Lee Kum Kee, for a record £1.28 billion, the largest sum ever paid for a single commercial building in the United Kingdom at that time. The developers recovered their investment with extraordinary profit. The street below recovered more quietly. Maybe the defenders of this project are correct, that what happened was a temporary anomaly, an unforeseen consequence of a particular sun angle during a narrow window of late summer weeks, now permanently resolved by 8,000 carefully engineered sunshades. The history of architecture is full of first-generation failures that gave way to better solutions. Early steel-framed towers in the 1930s shed cladding panels and cracked under thermal expansion before engineers learned to accommodate the movement. Commercial aviation's first pressurized jets, the de Havilland Comet, disintegrated in flight before the industry understood metal fatigue, and what followed was a generation of aircraft that redefined safe mass transit. The technology matured because the failure was public and the reckoning was real. Or maybe the lesson is darker than that. The solar analysis at 20 Fenchurch Street was done. The louvres were designed. The Vidara incident had already happened. Every instrument pointed to the outcome, and the outcome arrived on schedule. Tonight on Eastcheap, the sunshades hold. The Sky Garden is fully booked for months in advance. But somewhere in the pipeline of cities, building taller, curving glass towers in denser financial districts, another solar analysis is being concluded with the same confidence, and someone's car is parked beneath it.